This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Did you have anybody who was like a mentor about in that market in terms of, okay, Arn, here's what you do or don't do? You mentioned that Ted sort of helped you get up and get going, but you didn't really pick his brain about, hey, where should I stay and who should I bunk with and how does all this travel work? You didn't really have that conversation. But who actually sits you down one day and says, because we wrestling fans have heard this a lot, whatever you do, keep your wife away from the business. Who dropped that knowledge on you the first time?
Well, I really didn't have a mentor, and at this point in time, no one came up and embraced me other than Bob. And I really couldn't talk to Bob at the building in a lot of cases because, again, we were kayfabing. But when they were during this 3-week period, like the first week, a couple of days in, they were just giving me some get over matches and I was going to get, a match on TV so that people knew who I was coming to their town in the next 2 weeks. And it was building towards the last week, wrestling Bob. But no one really embraced me. No one said, hey, where you staying? Do you know what to do? People were very protective of their spot. In those days, wrestlers, they weren't going to help you come in. And I was powerlifting at the time. I didn't have a great body, but I was a pretty strong kid, some athletic ability. They weren't going to just, hey, welcome in, come take my spot, come take my livelihood. They weren't going to be that welcoming. So for that 3 weeks, the one thing I learned, and in talking to Ted later, would have been to be a little more assertive on asking Ted what to do. Now, keep in mind, during the period I was down in Pensacola, Ted was wrestling in Memphis, partners with Danny Davis's The Nightmares. So he's having those same trips, those same long nights, same matches, same full routine every day. He didn't have time to really sit there and hold my hand over the phone. I kind of learned it and picked it up on my own, was watching and listening and seeing that guys would come in the locker room. There would be 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 of them together. I figured, okay, these guys must be traveling together. But I didn't ask a lot of questions. And in those days, it could have went 2 ways. A veteran would have looked at you and went, hey, this guy's trying to figure it out. Or this guy won't shut up. Was he been in the business for a cup of coffee? Why is he asking all these questions?
Right.
So it was a little more hostile entry into the business in those days.
What about Colonel Buck Robley? Not a name you and I have ever talked about here on the show. Probably a name a lot of listeners don't even remember. Of course, he's no longer with us. He passed away, I don't know, years ago, maybe nearly 10 years ago. Any Buck Robley stories ever?
Well, I just heard, like in retrospect, I always heard that, and more so years later, that he was a really smart guy about the business of that generation. He was a really clever booker. I think he booked for Bill.
Yeah, he did.
At some point. And, maybe held that position in other companies. And everybody, to this day, I think Jake the Snake will tell you, Buck Robley was a smart guy. But he got recommended by, and just me hearing conversations. I was never around him. I never traveled with him or anything like that, but I just always heard that he was very smart.
Let's talk about Joe Leduc for a minute. You mentioned that you had some matches with him down there. He was your tag partner. We've probably got some younger listeners who don't know that name. If you haven't ever before, throw it in your Google machine, Joe Leduc's Blood Oath. It was a famous tape trader tape from the 70s. I think it was, there in Memphis. Lance Russell's holding up the microphone on that old studio set. And Joe Leduc comes out with a freaking axe and cuts his arm on TV. You got any interesting Joe Leduc stories? Had you seen that axe spot before when you started tagging with him?
I did not, but I could tell how off the wall the character was until I saw some of that stuff. And then you start to blur the lines as, hey, is this a character or is this him? And it was pretty damn intimidating. I don't mind telling you.
It's what a character. I can't imagine. There's got to be just a treasure trove of stories with him.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.